I try to respect opposing opinions because I'm in the opinion business. I came here to rodeo. I wanted to be a rodeo cowboy. And what a silly dream in hindsight, but I loved it.
Random.
So I moved here to ride bulls.
One interview subject you're secretly hoping to land.
Mike Tyson.
Would you ever run for an office?
I don't think so.
No.
Never say never.
Yeah.
They always say, if you want to find out every terrible thing you've ever done, run for office.
Yeah.
I haven't done anything really horrible, but there's a lot of stuff I'd rather just keep between me and God, you know?
Yeah. For 2 decades, I've helped brands earn credibility through PR. Now I'm turning the mic on the storytellers themselves. I'm Melissa DiGianfilippo, founder and CEO of Publicity, and this is Off Deadline, the real stories of reporters, hosts, and media insiders beyond the byline. I'm so excited for my guest today, Mike Broomhead. Hi, Mike.
Hello.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Mike Broomhead is one of Arizona's most recognizable voices. Born in Ohio, raised in Florida, and now an Arizonian for 30 years, he went from electrician and rodeo rider to the state's leading talk radio host. Mike has been the go-to voice asking tough questions of politicians, celebrities, and newsmakers. Inspired by his brother's sacrifice in Iraq, he first made a name at the nation's largest pro-troop rallies, later emceeing presidential visits, and even subbing for Glenn Beck. Today, he leads the Mike Broomhead Show on KTAR, the podcast Amazing Arizonians, and the CW7 weekly TV show Broomhead. This is fun for me because you're my first radio host to have.
Really?
Actually, sorry, John Jay was on, so that's a big fat lie. Okay, let's say you're my first talk radio host only.
It's so funny how different.
Oh, so different.
John Jay and I are. I love John Jay.
He's hilarious.
But we are completely different worlds.
Absolutely. I mean, in a million ways, which we'll get into.
Can I tell you a story real quick?
Please. Yeah.
So back when we worked in the same cluster of radio stations.
Yeah.
At the same time, I was on the air, and somebody was playing someone being very critical of politics.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And it was a woman's voice. And I said to my producer, "Who is that?" And he said, this was on the air.
Yeah.
"That's Cardi B." And I genuinely said,
"Who's Cardi B?
Is she famous?" And he laughed like you just did. At the very same time, there was a government shutdown that was happening. That same day, on the air, John Jay had no idea there was a government shutdown. And I thought, we live on the same planet, but we live in different worlds.
Very different worlds.
Isn't that great? But it's so much fun.
It is, yeah. And I'm sure you would have a lot in common. It's just...
We do. I mean, I love John Jay.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I always wanted someone to do a podcast with him and ask me pop culture questions.
Yeah.
And ask him political questions.
Let's do it.
To see how dumb we sound. And then call it Worlds Collide, because we come from such different places.
Genius.
Wouldn't that be fun?
So much fun. I'm going to figure out a way to do it.
That would be fun.
Okay.
I would do it in a minute.
Perfect. Well, take note of that. I want to first start with your backstory, because I don't feel like you had a vision of being in the career you're in right now.
Never.
Electrician. You've done some different things. So how did you get started in radio?
Short story of it is, I moved here 30 years ago. I was an electrician. I knew I'd find work. I came here to rodeo. I wanted to be a rodeo cowboy. And what a silly dream in hindsight, but I loved it.
Random.
So I moved here to ride bulls. And that's what I started doing. Unfortunately, my brother, I'm the oldest of 3. My middle brother in 2003 was killed in Iraq.
I'm so sorry. I can't even...
So the war started in March of 2003, and it happened on Memorial Day. So of all days for it to happen, it was Memorial Day, May of that year, just a couple of months after the war started. And it was such a big story because it was so early in the war, and I was the family spokesman, that I was asked to speak at a lot of different things once the story got out. So when I came back to Arizona, I was speaking at big rallies. I got asked to join President Bush's campaign as a volunteer. I volunteered and traveled all over the country, and it turned into guest appearances on radio and television. One thing led to another, and a couple of years later...
Wow. And first of all, I can't even imagine how going through, I know it's a younger brother.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm the oldest.
I'm so sorry. I can't even fathom what that's like. But what a cool opportunity for you to take that horrible moment and you've built this amazing career from it. I wonder what he thinks.
Yeah, I do too sometimes, because we were a lot different. I have a third brother, a youngest brother, that's a mixture of the two of us. But Tom, the one who was killed, very quiet, very reserved, really funny once you got to know him, but not very outgoing.
Yeah.
I'm the outgoing one. So we were such opposites in that way. I wonder, he'd probably laugh.
Yeah.
He would probably laugh at it.
I love that that's how you got the start. And have you missed being an electrician, or did you miss out on the rodeoing?
I miss the work.
Yeah.
I don't miss the business, if that makes sense.
Totally.
I don't miss chasing money, but I do miss the accomplishment of a day's work. I do miss that work.
Yeah.
I don't miss the heat.
No.
I complain now from the building to the truck instead of working.
You were having to like go into crawl spaces and do kind
all
of
kinds
crazy
of stuff.
Yeah. Wow. What a story. I want to understand, because you've interviewed a lot of people.
Okay.
And was there a story that maybe pushed you the furthest out of your comfort zone? And if that happened, how did that transform you?
I don't know that it was the story itself, but oddly enough, I became really close with the late Senator John McCain.
Yeah.
He treated me like family, and he was so good to me.
Mm-hmm.
And we had gotten close. He would come in the studio and we'd argue and debate. And he was a really funny guy. And when he got sick and the news came out that he had brain cancer, I went into the studio that morning and did my show prep like I always do. And when I opened the mic to talk about it, I got emotional.
Oh, gosh.
And I was not expecting, like I'm getting emotional now. I didn't expect to be emotional because in this world you kind of report, and I'm not a journalist, but you talk about a story. I felt so connected to him that it was a mess. I was a mess. And that kind of transformed me in a way because I realized then that it's okay to be close to, in my business, I don't have to be impartial.
No, you were not.
It was an emotional conversation about someone that I just love so much. And the reality of it kind of hit me on the air. And it was pretty raw for me. It was tough.
And I assume that vulnerability when your like listeners and fans, and even people who didn't know, because I'm sure that was shared and people heard it who had never heard you before, it probably made you more likable. And because when people see you open up like that and have a human side, it naturally does that, you know?
Yeah, and it's weird in my business because you either love what I do or you hate what I do. Because it's opinion. And I wish people knew a little bit more that I do care. I may disagree, but I care. And I think maybe in that instance, some people saw that because he was just such a good person to me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, of course. I read an interview you did for a local magazine where you said exactly that. Like what you wish you could change in the world was that even if we're going to disagree, like we just can like be nice, be kind, you know? It's got to be hard.
Be respectful. And that I try to respect opposing opinions because I'm in the opinion business. And I don't think anything gets accomplished by hatred, not even if it's not that strong a word. You can disagree with someone's point without being disagreeable with them as a human being.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But I also am in a business that I know has for years has lived off of that partial, that one-sided draw a dividing line. And so I try to walk a line. I've been able to do it for a long time, but I don't know if it works all the time.
Oh, I'm sure it doesn't. But I guess question is, since 2020, it feels like the political environment for people who maybe aren't always so into politics got very divisive, right?
Sure.
Like, did that change anything about how you went about your job?
I think it affirmed what I do.
Okay.
Because I've always been the person that I want other voices. I love when people disagree.
A little debate is always healthy. Yes.
But it's when you can show the human side. What made it difficult was there was such a disdain for the facts. I was pretty vocal about I voted for Trump. But that doesn't mean that I've got his picture hanging on my wall. I always say my vote's not a Valentine. I just thought he was the best choice. But I wanted to hear from the people that thought completely opposite. It's interesting. If you and I have a close friend that I grew up with. We rode the school bus together in middle school. We've been friends for 40 years, 45 years. And he is polar opposite me politically. I don't know how we breathe the same air, but it's fun to talk to someone like that because we have the same background.
You have mutual respect for each other too.
But opposite viewpoints. I think that's great.
And it's possible. I think it'd be nice if people understood.
He defends me on social media. I defend him on social media to the people that don't know us like we know each other.
That's awesome. Was there like a story that you did or maybe a moment when you were like, I cannot believe this is my job and I'm getting paid to do this?
Yeah.
Okay, what is it?
This was, all right, well, yes and no. Yes, but it's before radio.
Okay, that's fine. I want to hear it.
I got asked twice to be a master of ceremonies for 2 presidential visits. Before I was on the radio, 18,000 people at the Coliseum, the Madhouse on McDowell. And I was the MC for the entire night, introduced Luis Gonzalez as one of the speakers. It was very cool. After it was over, there was a hallway. And on one side of the hallway were the celebrities that spoke. Luis Gonzalez and his family, Tom Lehman, the golfer and his family, Rick Schroeder, the actor and his family, and then me. And as the president made his way down the hallway, talking to everyone, I was last. And when he came up to me, I reintroduced because I had met him before. And I said, Mr. President, my name is Mike. He goes, oh, I know who you are. He said, how's your mom?
What?
And we had about a 4-minute conversation. He had his arm on my shoulder. Now, behind him were all of the members of Congress, the Republicans in Congress, all of the House members, both Senator McCain and Senator Kyle, waiting for him to be done talking to me.
What a feeling that must have been.
I was from here to the door across the room from the limousine. And I remember thinking then, what in the world am I doing here? And then a few months later, I got asked to be the master of ceremonies at a visit at Bank One Ballpark. Then now it's Chase Field. 30,000+ people. And I was the master of ceremonies.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Like, what a cool gift you just then, people must have seen that maybe you didn't, because you didn't volunteer for this. You didn't like sign a form and be like, pick me to.
They called me 2 hours before the event at Bank One Ballpark and said, we need you to MC. Can you be here? I went home and put on the only suit I owned and drove my work truck to the players' parking lot at the stadium. And I'm sorry if I'm going too long.
No, I love this. This is so good.
I started riding. There used to be a place in Phoenix, 35th Avenue and Grand, called Mr. Lucky's.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I rode bulls in that arena, and I announced in that arena. Wow. So I was friends with all the bartenders and stuff. So now this is 2004, probably 6 or 7 years after I had ever been in that place.
Yeah.
I'm walking on the field with a Secret Service escort on the field, and I heard somebody yell out my name, and I look up, and it's 2 of the waitresses and a couple of the bartenders from Lucky's. And they all said, what in the world? I have no idea. I have no idea. But in just a few years, what happened?
That is so cool. And that honestly is so inspiring. I think people today feel like they had to start so long ago to be successful in whatever the career path is. But like a public facing job like you have now, just to not get it, you earned it, but like to be found.
No, I know people that have worked really hard. Yeah. I know people that go to college for 4 years. They're brilliant at Cronkite. They work for nothing overnight just to get an opportunity. And I feel horrible when I tell them my story. I literally had someone say, hey, you're pretty good at this. Do you want to try your own show?
Yeah.
That never happens.
That's you and John Jay have that in common.
Yeah.
Have you ever asked him that story? Yes. That's crazy. You're right. That does not happen. It's put in the work, go to a different market, have a really shitty time, slot, and then maybe you'll move another small town, and it's gonna suck. Yeah,
it takes you 25 years to be an overnight success. It was the opposite for me.
Wow.
Now I worked hard. I work really hard at this job, but there's a lot of people that work hard that never get an opportunity like I've gotten.
Yeah, that's awesome. When have you laughed the hardest or felt the deepest connection while on an interview or an assignment?
John McCain. I keep going back to him.
I love it, yeah.
He was one of the most irreverent, funniest people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
And what he would say when the microphone was off was even funnier.
Really?
So we would laugh about stuff. We would talk sports and we would laugh, and he would tell me stories about Barry Goldwater. And I think that connection with him, sitting in his office in D.C. the day before the first Trump inauguration, in his office with pictures that photographs that Barry Goldwater had taken, and just telling me stories. He told a story. He had a picture behind in his office. And it was a sign by a lake, and it was in Vietnamese. And now this is in his office.
Wow. Yeah.
He said, and this is exactly how he told the story. He said, so this is where I got shot down. And so anytime they put up a sign, he said, and it says in Vietnamese, this is where the air pirate, John, however it says.
Whatever, yeah.
And he said, so whenever Americans go to Vietnam, those sons of bitches take them to my sign. And we're standing in his office laughing about the absolute worst time in his life.
The scariest moment of his life.
That connection was so real to me because he had no reason to treat me the way he did. but he was so kind and made me laugh so hard with the stories and the jokes he told.
Yeah. Why do you think that happened? Like, why do people have that trust in you? What is it?
Because I'm not in it for me. What I mean is, I want to hear your story. It's kind of like what you're doing with me. I feel very comfortable with you. I don't feel like you're about to ask me something that's, but it's just having a conversation with someone, and I never want to trip somebody up. If I disagree, I'll say so. But I think that's part of it, is I genuinely want your story. I genuinely want to talk about this topic. I don't have gotcha questions. And that's not always the case in my business, especially.
Yeah.
There are times I've been asked to go do some national stuff, and I know going in there.
Depending on where you're going, you know what's going to happen.
Well, me and CNN,
I know,
I'm not criticizing CNN, but we're two different worlds.
Yeah. Was there a time that you were totally unprepared for an interview or a story, and how did you handle it or improvise your way through it?
Okay, this one is not fun. I was doing afternoons at another radio station, and I was in the newsroom doing show prep.
Yeah.
And we heard the news that there was a school shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary.
I remember that day.
And we were watching as the death toll kept rising. And then we found out it was an entire classroom full of kids that had been murdered. And then the murderer took his own life. And I remember stepping out and calling Glenn Beck. And if people aren't familiar with him, he was the #1 guy in talk radio nationally. I called Glenn and I said, how do I go on the air for 3 hours and make any sense? How do I talk about this? I can't talk about anything else. There's nothing else to talk about.
Yeah.
But I was weeping. What can you say? And there's no way you can prepare for that. I imagine that's how it was for people in the media on 9/11.
Yeah.
You can't prepare. There's nothing else to talk about. But how do you make any sense of what you're going to say?
I've always wondered how in those moments, journalists, anyone in the public eye keeps it together. I mean, I remember at Sandy Hook, I have 2 girls, and my 13-year-old was a newborn, and I was nursing her, seeing this happen on the news. And a new mom, like, this is the world that we live in. And as a PR person, my first thought is like, how is this person standing with a straight face reporting this right now?
And how awful the story was when the parents were showing up at the school.
Oh God, I can't even.
They separated the parents. So the group of parents that were taken off, and there's a small group of them, they had to know why they were separated.
Yeah. That's just.
And someone had to walk in and tell them.
Yeah. It's very scary.
How do you make any sense and talk about that?
Yeah. But it's such important work to be able to be that voice, to say this happened and these are the facts, or this is,
right.
What's unveiling.
This is what we know.
Yeah.
But it's just.
Yeah.
You just want to cry with everybody else.
Of course. And sometimes you can.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. I mean, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that unfortunately, like, there's going to be a lot of things that happen in the world that are going to be worse or just as horrible. And it's not going to get easier.
Well, that Saturday, I was on a motorcycle ride with my friends on the Saturday when Congresswoman Giffords was shot in Tucson.
Oh, God, yes.
And I remember jumping on my bike and telling my friends, I got to go, and racing back. And that time period where we kept hearing reports that she didn't make it and she wasn't going to make it. And again, how you make any sense, that little girl that died in that, a Supreme Court or a judge, it was just those kinds of things that happened. It wrecks you. You can't prepare for them.
No, you can't. Yeah. Well, was there a story or an interview that required extra effort or sacrifice that it wasn't reflected in the final piece? No one would know, but I want you to tell us right now about it.
I think what's been difficult is when you interview someone that has dealt with something tragic.
Yeah.
There were a couple of them. Phoenix police officer Jason Schechterly, severely burned. Jason and I have become friends. But when I first met him, talking to him about his injuries, there's a man named Thomas Yaxall. And Thomas, you'll remember the story. Thomas Yaxall is a civilian and in the West Valley witnessed somebody was trying to murder a state trooper.
Yes.
And Thomas had to pull out his own personal firearm and shoot the suspect.
Yes, I remember that, and that's so funny. I didn't remember his name, but I remember
Yeah.
the story. Mhm.
And it changed him. He became a celebrity for all the wrong reasons. He did a heroic thing, but you took a life.
And now he has to sleep at night knowing
Right.
that. But even though it was obviously like the right
and
thing
he's
to do.
doing great. But those are the ones that are tough because I want to be so kind and I want to be so careful. But at the same time, I have so
Yeah.
many questions.
Yeah.
Jason Schechterly telling a story about how the hardest part was that his children didn't recognize him because he was so severely burned.
He's
with
such an
tears in his eyes.
inspiration.
He is.
I
I just saw him. He's a great guy.
God.
And I'm
Yeah.
glad he's got the sense of humor he does because he disarms you with his sense of humor. It makes it okay.
Yeah, because I'm sure it's hard. The first time you're in person interviewing someone, it's just it's got to be hard.
It is hard.
You know?
And then to worry about what you should and shouldn't ask.
Yeah.
That you're going to walk away and have listeners wonder, well, why didn't you ask him this? And that's really possible.
Yeah.
But at the same time, be understanding. I'm going to ask you really personal questions about a horrible time in your life. And
Yeah.
he was great about it. But that was tough for me.
I'm curious. Like, did you ever have aspirations when you started kind of, really taking off and being asked to do these big things? To do
Yeah,
something else?
I got a taste of it. I got to do some national radio and television, and I still get to do it once in a while. I think if it had happened, I would have been great with it.
Yeah.
But I intentionally am so pro local. I say all the time, I'd quit this job. If there was a job, ambassador of Arizona, I would quit this to do that.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I love this place.
Mm-hmm.
So getting the privilege of knowing police chiefs and fire chiefs and mayors and governors, and I like that aspect. And I don't know that I could be as good at this job nationally.
If it wasn't
because-
so personal, because
Right.
this is personal. This is your backyard.
Yeah, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't know that I'd have the relationships with the president or the vice president. I don't know that I would be able to pull that
Yeah,
off.
that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I guess I always just wonder, like, aspirationally, like, do you ever dream of that? But it's awesome to hear that, like, this is just as important and maybe as big to you.
And I wouldn't have
know?
moved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wouldn't have gone to Chicago or LA or New York. I wouldn't have moved to do it.
Yeah.
And there's nobody that's going to say, yes, we want
Stay
you to
in
do
Phoenix.
this, but you can stay there and we'll bring everybody to you. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
So-
that's very true.
Yeah.
Would you ever run for an office?
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, I can't never say never.
Yeah.
But I really I don't want to go through that process.
Yeah.
You make people pick a side, and I'm not talking about political opposition. I
No.
mean within your own party. And you find out who your friends are.
Oh, for sure.
They always say,
Yeah.
if you want to find out every terrible thing you've ever done, run for office.
Yeah.
And all joking aside, haven't done anything really horrible, but there's a lot of stuff I'd rather just keep between me and
Fair.
God. You know?
Yeah, we'll leave the college days and all that kind
no,
of.
it is more recent than that. I
Okay,
just
fair. What unconventional path or experience in your life has unexpectedly made you better at your job?
Oh wow. I think the being an electrician, starting out I was just a blue collar guy. Barely have a high school diploma. That's a true story. Barely have a high school diploma. Straight from high school, went into the workforce with no plan and became a really good electrician. And then all those years later, so I started in 1985. In 2001, had my own business and never imagined I'd be a business owner. I think it makes me better at my job because I used to listen to talk radio
Yeah.
driving in a work truck. And now I feel like when I'm picturing people,
Yeah.
that's who I picture.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm picturing blue collar workers, people that are working for a living. So I think that makes me better because I still speak the same language. I'm not a professional broadcaster. I just talk like everybody else talks.
Yeah.
So I think that's helped me.
It totally has. I mean, that's part of that vulnerability. It's like you're a real guy. And I think even the best reporters, even the most trained, will tell you when you actually get good, it's when you unlearn all that they've taught you to do and you just become yourself again.
And the best people that I like locally, the people that I think are brilliant at their jobs, you feel like you know who they are.
Yes.
They're not just professional broadcasters.
You know their whole person.
Right.
You feel like you
know,
do
there
at
are a
least.
few people, Walter Cronkite was one of them when I was a kid. He was a professional broadcaster. You went to him, you knew what you were going to get.
Yeah.
You didn't have to feel like you had to know him.
Totally.
But locally, I love John Hook.
Oh, he's great.
But
Yeah.
John is just one of those guys, and who he's working with now, Christina, you feel like they let you in.
Yeah.
And I mean, Corey McCloskey.
Oh, he's hilarious.
I know we're talking about just one station and it's not limited to one.
No.
But Corey is just a guy that lets you in. He's hilarious, and I just love that.
Totally. And a true professional. Like, he knows how to put the story together, but he
does.
makes you feel like you're along for the journey.
Right.
Which is, and you do that too, I think. Actually, was it yesterday, you just rode along with a cop.
Yeah.
And you just talked about, and like, I wish you would have gone into more detail, frankly, because I was like, what happened when that driver went on the freeway and like.
You want me to tell you?
Yeah.
So we were for those of you that know the Valley, we were at a QT on the southwest corner of Southern and the 101 in the East Valley.
Yep.
We were pulling out of the QT. We were going to go north on the 101.
Mm-hmm.
So we went east. Mm-hmm. A car just went in front of us. Mm-hmm. We get behind this car, and we thought the guy was going to make a U-turn.
Yeah.
He didn't. He drove on to the off-ramp. So he was going to be going north in the southbound lanes of the 101 at about 2:30 in the morning. And this happened right in front of us.
And you were in an unmarked car.
Yeah. It was, and it's...
I wish I would know what car it was too.
It's such a cool car. And so
Yeah.
he says, holy shit. I don't know if I should
That's
say
fine.
that or
It's
not.
okay, yeah.
And that he lights him up and hits the sirens. And luckily, this guy stopped and we got him turned around before he got to the freeway. And young guy, and I'm looking at this young man, and I say kid, but a young man who looks like he has his life together. Too much to drink. Went to jail for DUI. And going to get an aggravated DUI because he was a wrong-way driver. And it could have been worse. He could have killed somebody or himself.
Absolutely.
But that kid's life completely altered. I mean, I watched him sit there holding his head in his hands. He was cooperative. He was polite. He was respectful. But he was drunk. And he was really drunk. And he went to jail. And I watched them put him in handcuffs. They put him in the back of a police car. They took his belt off of him. They emptied his pockets.
Yeah.
Everything in an evidence bag. And he went to jail.
And his whole life forever. Now, that one moment, I can't even, to be there and to see that and that potential destruction. Again, like, I'm a mom, so everything to me is like, my kid could have been, there.
Right.
It's so insanely scary to me.
And how often it happens. These troopers are so professional, but that's what they do. That's a lot of times all they do is they spend their Fridays and Saturdays and Sunday nights, and it's DUI after DUI, and we're lucky they're out there because
thank God,
this guy, again,
was going to get on the freeway.
Was going to get on the freeway going the wrong way.
God. I want to go into rapid fire, a little bit lighter, possibly.
Sure.
And your job is just to say the first thing that comes to mind. But if there's a story behind it, I want to hear it. Okay. One interview subject you're secretly hoping to land.
Mike Tyson. He's so fascinating. Such a fascinating figure.
He totally is. Yeah. He's in crazy stuff. What's the wildest rumor you've ever heard about yourself?
Oh, wildest rumor I've ever heard about myself. Oh, that I was doing drugs with a famous person here in town.
Who was the person?
I can't remember.
Oh, dang.
But it was on when it was called Twitter.
Yeah.
And it was that they knew that I had done cocaine with this person. And here's what's hilarious. I've never done one illicit. I've never even smoked weed. Even it's legal, I've never smoked weed. And it wasn't that all my friends did growing up.
Yeah.
I hung up with a rough crowd.
Yeah.
It just was never my thing. I've never done one illicit drug. I could swear on a Bible that I never have. And to see that, I thought,
that's kind of bananas, yeah.
and the guy said he saw me do it.
Apparently, you have a doppelganger out
Poor
there
guy.
somewhere doing
If
drugs
I do,
with celebrities.
poor man.
Most embarrassing autocorrect fail in a published piece or a story that you can't take back.
I have a story that's embarrassing, but it's a little different.
That's fine.
Okay? Mm-hmm. First time doing a national television show in New York. Mm-hmm. I'm doing Glenn Beck's program from his New York studio. Mm-hmm. 1 block from Times Square, 44th Street and Avenue of the Americas.
Yep.
I'm up mid-block. I'm in a hotel. Got a suit on, got a leather satchel, and I'm walking a half a block to the studio.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking out loud, this is the coolest you are ever going to be. I mean, literally, I'm looking at the Lion King, the Fox News building, and I'm walking to do a national television show. Mm-hmm. Coolest you're ever going to be. check in. They give you my card key to get up to the 33rd floor. Check in. They say, here's your desk to do show prep. Set everything down. Walk into the men's room. Flies wide open.
Oh my God, the whole walk.
I'm walking through Midtown Manhattan with my fly wide open. So now I'm standing in the men's room giggling
Yep.
because I'm such an idiot.
That's so funny. You're thinking like, this
Yes,
is really it. This is my moment.
It was still the coolest I've ever been.
Yep.
But it just proved you can't really get rid of all the redneck.
No.
It was hilarious.
I love it. Story or assignment you'd cover if your editor said, unlimited budget, go wild.
Oh, Super Bowl.
Okay, yeah.
College football national championship.
You haven't done that. Well, I guess yeah, that makes sense.
No, I'm not, because that's not my world,
Yeah.
and we have Arizona sports. That's their world.
Yeah.
But I am a huge college football fan.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I love sports. I love the game of football. So I think for me, that selfishly,
Yeah.
that would be it.
Speaking, I have to just tell you this because you're from Ohio. I went to Kent State.
Did you? My cousins lived in Mentor.
Okay, yeah.
And we
it's right
lived
there.
in a little town called Newberry.
Oh, yeah.
And we used to drive past Kent State
Yeah.
to go to my cousin's house.
Yeah.
Which obviously back then, when I was a kid in the early 70s, what happened at Kent State in the
Oh,
60s was still such a big story.
It was still a big story when I went there in 2001.
Okay.
But not obviously like it was just more memorialized,
Yeah.
Every year.
It was still pretty raw when I was a kid in the early 70s.
For sure. But like it's just so funny because no one really thinks much about Kent State, like even now. And so I just had to bring
unfortunately,
it up to
when
you.
that name comes up.
Yeah. That's all they think about. If I weren't a journalist, influencer, host, if you weren't all the things you are, what would you be?
What would I have been, or what would I be now?
Well, you were an electrician, so I feel like you'd still own that. Like, what would you be now? If you were done with this career, what would you be?
If I could do anything I wanted.
Anything.
Stand-up comedian.
Okay. I like that.
I love stand-up comedy.
Did you ever study it or do any?
Not really. I mean, I come from a family that's pretty funny, and we have a dark sense of humor, and I have a lot of funny friends. But I also know there is a big difference between being funny in a group of people and getting on stage when they say, "Okay, make me laugh, clown boy."
Yes.
And I would love to be able to accomplish that challenge. I can be funny in moments. I have good comebacks, but to be able to go out in front of a crowd and think I'm going to make you laugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love to be able to do that. I know a guy here in town that was a former lawyer that did stand up and was really good at it.
It's crazy.
Do you know Kirk Nermy?
No.
Kirk Nermy was Jodi Arias' attorney.
Wow.
And he has got the most fascinating story I've ever heard. And I was one of the people that criticized him, saying what a horrible thing to do to defend her and call Travis out. And it was not his doing. It was her doing. I brought him on the air to apologize to him, and that's how we became friends.
Wow.
He left the bar. He left being a lawyer, did a one-man stage show, and is brilliant and hilarious.
I'm going to have to look up his
Kirk
YouTube
Nermy.
channel.
You're
Yeah.
going to love him.
It was such a pleasure to chat with you. Is there anything else that you want people to know about you?
Oh, I don't know. I'm certainly not I'm not hateful. I don't hate anyone. You know, I'm opinionated, but I certainly leave room for other people's opinions.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for
This
being
is awesome.
here.
Thank you.
Yeah.